Thank you for joining me on the Fire Rescue Wellness Podcast. I'm your host, AZ. I find the research and resources and then provide the fire service with the so what, now what, to ensure the health and well-being of every member of our profession. Together, let's thrive. Hey everyone, it's AZ with the Fire Rescue Wellness Podcast. This is episode 150, and welcome to the show. Today, I am doing a solo episode once again. Stuff is getting busy in my life, so it's harder to book guests. But that said, if you have a suggestion for a guest, let me know. There's one caveat. I do not take solicitations. So don't message me and say, I want to be a guest on your show. I want you to message me and say, I have an idea for a wonderful guest, and here's why. And because it's episode 150, I decided I was going to do a little giveaway. And so I will be sending, I'm sorry, United States only. So sorry, United States only. I will be sending a care package to a lucky winner, and I'm going to raffle it off. But in order to get entered for the raffle, I need you to either email me or DM me the word 150 or the number 150. So my email address is info@firerescuewellness.org, and DMing me on Instagram @firerescuewellness will get the job done. I will do the raffle. I will contact the winner and get your address and get the little care package sent out for you. So how's that for fun? I also realized that I make assumptions, and I assume that if you are listening to the podcast, you know who I am and what I stand for and you know my story, but I can't really make that assumption. And so I wanted to reintroduce myself today for those of you that might be new listeners. And I usually introduce myself like this. I am a biochemist by degree. I'm a strength and conditioning coach and a nutritionist by credential. I'm a retired firefighter by trade. And by choice, I own Fire Rescue Wellness. I own this business. And the reason I own this business is that I recognized that the men and women who willingly raise their right hand and swear the oath to risk their own lives to save the lives of people they don't even know sometimes don't have the support they need during their careers. And so Fire Rescue Wellness educates and supports the fire service with consulting, coaching, speaking engagements, all of those things. And so if your department needs a little bit of education, a little bit of direction, I can definitely help you out with that. Today, I am once again leaning on my listeners to get a topic idea for the podcast. And Paul, as always, shout out Paul, came through. It sounds like he was on duty when I messaged him. And he just went up and down the hall of the firehouse yelling like, what do you guys want to learn about? And so he came up with a lot of really good suggestions. But the one that I'm going with today is, what questions should we be asking our primary care physicians above and beyond sort of that occupational health physical that we get? Now, first, I want to acknowledge I am not a doctor. I didn't sleep in a Holiday Inn last night, but I have had an awful lot of really smart guests on my podcast in the past. And so I'm going to be drawing from their experiences as well. And I'm also going to make the assumption that you're getting a fairly decent physical with your with your occupational health. And so you're getting basic blood work, CBC, blood lipids, metabolic panel. I'm hoping you're getting a hemocult test. I'm hoping you're getting they're actually laying their eyes on you and doing a physical examination. I'm hoping you're getting an eye test and a hearing test and a spirometry test. And I'm hoping that you're getting at least a very basic cardiac workup. So EKG and things past that are a bonus. But I'm going to be moving through this talk with the assumption that you're getting kind of those basic things. So what do we need to ask for in order to advocate for ourselves? What do we need to ask for? And the thing I want to start out with is that your physician needs to know what you do. And everyone pretty much understands oh, they're a firefighter. But it's interesting. My previous guest, Jenna Yentis, stated her dad was a firefighter for years and years and years. And it was just this sort of abstract concept to her. Like, my dad goes to the firehouse and then he fights fires and then he comes home. But when she really started to get a little bit older and think about it, she's, damn, my dad goes to the firehouse and he fights fires and all of these other things. And so I think sometimes our physicians don't maybe dig deep enough into what they need to know about firefighting. And I am going to direct you back to a previous episode because I think it would be helpful. When I had the Beltane Guild on, when I talked to Melissa and Brittany and Maya, one of the things that they brought up was they have an informational sheet. And this is really related to reproductive health, but it also gives some good information to physicians, like what should they be thinking of and maybe what are those next step tests that they need to do. I believe in reverse engineering almost everything in my life. I like to reverse engineer things. And so when we are thinking about what we need to ask for or advocate for ourselves with our primary care physicians, I'd invite you to revisit what is taking the lives of our firefighters. And so in this order, it is suicide and cancer, cardiovascular disease, and then accidents of one type or another. And so if we work from that framework of these are my risk factors, these are my heightened mortality risk factors as a firefighter, then I think it's really a little bit easier. It's less overwhelming to ask for what we need. And so I teach 4 pillars of health and wellness, and my pillars in the order that I present them are sleep, nutrition, mental health, and exercise. And by saying mental health, I'm not separating mental health from physical health. I'm indicating that paying attention to the things that improve our mental health, just like exercising improves our physical health, well, and our mental health too. But I'm just saying that is the interventions or the things we do to really work on our mental health. So in this order, sleep, nutrition, mental health, and exercise. And so if we start just with these pillars, if we start with sleep, then one of the things that we can talk to our primary care physicians about is perhaps getting a sleep study. Now, you're 25 years old, you're 30 years old, and you're saying, lady, people with sleep apnea and sleep disorders, they're old, they're overweight. That's not me. Well, actually, it could be you, because Sullivan et al. Found out that nearly 40% of the fire service has a diagnosable sleep disorder, so apnea and the other sleep disorders. And of those firefighters that have a diagnosable sleep disorder, about 80% of them neither know it or are treated. And so it is, I won't say probable, but it could be that you have an undiagnosed sleep disorder. So when you're advocating for yourself, I would definitely talk to your physician about potentially getting some sleep screening at the very least, or maybe some testing if possible. So that would be number 1. Number 2, I always talk about nutrition. And here's the thing. We know how to eat. We're not stupid. Nutrition is not a knowledge problem. It's an application problem. But sometimes we need someone to give us some guidance, hold our hand, help us out. And many times a dietitian visit or 2 or 5 or however many may actually be covered by your insurance. And if it requires a referral, you're already at your primary care physician. So talk to your physician about nutrition. Now, nutrition relates to being potentially overweight or obese, but nutrition can be very related and very interwoven with many of the disease processes that we experience just as civilians. And then we also have to step back and look at nutrition as it relates to cancer. And so I think if you are able to take advantage of your insurance to get some visits with a dietitian every year, I think that is really, really a good use of not only your time, but your time talking to your physician. The next thing I'd like to hit on is the mental health piece of it. Now, many departments are doing a better job, including mental health screening within their yearly occupational health surveys. And many departments are not doing such a great job doing that. And I would, again, advocating for yourself, ask your physician, are there any screening tools available? Are there any referrals that I might need to go proactively see a mental health professional? And I'm sure they will be very happy to help you out with that. The last one, exercise. The knowledge level of physicians regarding exercise doesn't tend to be extremely high. And it is very, very rare that a physician would be able to get you any sort of professional services from someone that's an expert in exercise. That said, I have Blue Cross Blue Shield insurance, and they do provide some resources through their Well on Target program. So I am relatively sure that many of our companies that cover us as firefighters may have resources available for us through the insurance company. So not so much that you would need anything from your physician in terms of exercise, but it's just something to keep in the back of your mind. So again, reverse engineering, we know what takes the lives of our firefighters, and the 4 pillars that I just mentioned, sleep, nutrition, mental health, and exercise, impact all of those disease processes that I mentioned before. Of course, accidents is not a disease process, but these 4 pillars impact accidents as well. So that's somewhere to start. Then I made a list of, it's kind of, and I'm sure I'm going to forget something. So Mike Connor, send me a text when I mess this up and I'll fix it in the show notes. But when I was looking at my dream team of tests that I would like to get some information about on myself, I came up with, in no particular order, I came up with, there's like 10 of them. The first one is each and every one of us should be getting our skin checked every single year by a dermatologist, and potentially more often. We are exposed to things that the general population is not exposed to, and you may have a skin cancer growing in a place that you would never, ever even consider, such as between your toes, on your scalp where you can't see it. And so I would most definitely make sure that you are getting a full body, head to toe. Your dermatologist should have this little device that they're looking at your skin through this. It's like a monocle almost. And you should be butt, you know what, naked. And they should be spreading your toes and moving your hair aside and looking in every single nook and cranny and taking a look for skin cancer. So again, in no particular order, but I think that one is very, very important. Speaking of skin cancer, any additional testing that you can get regarding cancer is incredible. And so a couple of things that I thought about, there is the availability of abdominal ultrasounds that can look at everything from basically your carotids to your male parts down below and everything in between. And those types of testing services, your physician may be able to refer you for something like that, but a lot of departments are actually contracting with companies such as United Diagnostic, and there's several other companies like that. They come out to your station, they set up a sort of a mobile examination room right in your station, and it takes maybe 15 or 20 minutes, and they're able to scan all of the major organs, again, between your neck and your junk. And so that would be something that I would definitely advocate for yourself. Additional cancer type screenings. Many agencies aren't actually providing thyroid panels and the thyroid hormone, taking a look at those things. And so in addition to potentially having your thyroid scanned, or at the very least having it manually palpated, I think having these thyroid panels is incredibly helpful, especially as a baseline. All of these things, if you can start getting these tests when you're younger and then have something to compare to as you age, it's wonderful. And I'm going to give you an experience from firsthand. This is firsthand experience. I went into the fire service in 2004. I had my initial physical before I got hired. The occupational health doctor looked at my white blood cell count. That's the one that they're usually worried about with me. And they're like, wow, your white cell count is extremely, extremely low. Like, we're really worried about this. And I'm like, I'm fine. I'm fine. And so I went back the following year. Again, same thing. Your white cell count's really low. And this went on for like 4 years until finally the occupational doctor's like, we're really worried about your white cell count. And I'm thinking, well, if I had something like leukemia, I'd be dead already. So I don't know what we're worried about, but I consented to a referral to a hematologist, so blood doctor. And again, they drew my blood. They looked at it. He patted me on the head. There's nothing wrong with you. Go home. But here's the point. Because I knew that my white cell count was typically super, super low, it actually saved me a huge pain in the appendix later. I was getting these abdominal pains, kind of transient. One day I'd have like bent over, doubled over abdominal pains, then would be fine. And then, months would go by and nothing would happen. Well, one day this sort of came to a head. And I drove myself to urgent care and they said, we're really concerned this might be your appendix. We really want to call an ambulance for you to take you to the hospital. Homegirl is not going to the hospital in an ambulance. So I drove myself, probably ill-advised, doubled over to the emergency room, Rush Copley in Aurora. And they did some examinations and they drew my blood and they're like, yeah, we just don't really think that it's your appendix because when you're having issues with your appendix, your white cell count is just super, super elevated. And yours is just like barely a little bit above normal. Bingo. My white cell count historically runs super low. And you're telling me now it's a little bit above normal? That's a red flag. And so they kept me overnight. They did a couple more tests and I was still having this tremendous abdominal pain. My white cell count had gone up a little bit. And so the physician, he didn't sound that confident doing it, but he's like, yeah, I think maybe it is your appendix. Maybe we should take it out. So here's the punchline. When he took out my appendix, he said, wow, that looked rotten. And I think it was very close to rupturing. I've never seen one that looked quite so bad that hadn't ruptured. And the thing is, if I hadn't known what my normal for me, white blood cell count was, I probably would have gone home and then ended up with a ruptured appendix. So a lot of times getting these tests and getting these baselines, it's super helpful. And that's kind of the same thing with this thyroid panel. Having those historical numbers that you can look back at over time is very helpful. Next, I would say if you have any family history of diabetes, if you have any transiently elevated blood glucose, any time if the physician has said, wow, your blood glucose is like 102, we're not too worried about it, but it's kind of high. I would advocate for getting a hemoglobin A1C just so that you can start tracking that over time. Again, trends are important. So if they're not giving that to you, corporate health, I would see if you can get that from your primary care physician. Next, I think it's a wonderful, again, for trends, I think it's wonderful to know your hormone number. So for males, of course, testosterone, for females, estrogen, and the other ancillary hormones. But we get to the age where men get to the age where they're tired. Maybe they're putting on body fat. Maybe they're having some sexual dysfunction. Maybe they're just having some symptoms. And then they go into the doctor. And at that time, they pull their hormones. And then they say, oh, your testosterone is low or low normal or whatever. But what was your testosterone 10 years ago? What was your testosterone 15 years ago when you started? I just think it's one of those things. It's not only interesting, but it's also great to have sort of those baselines throughout the years. Next. Ooh, PT and pelvic floor PT. I think definitely within law enforcement, and I think it happens within fire too, potentially more in females than males, but I am not even so sure. I think that we sometimes create our own problems in different ways. Now, one of those problems we might create for ourselves as females is we deliver a child and we have X number of weeks allotted to us. And so we go back to work potentially prior to maybe when we should go back to work. So that could create some problems. We also do this thing, and we call it within police and fire, many people call it the safety pee. So we don't really know when the next time is that we're going to be able to go to the bathroom. So, we have to go to drill. Let me just go to the bathroom now, even though I don't have to. And then later in the day, oh gosh, we have to go do a public education event. I don't really need to go to the bathroom, but I better go to the bathroom because I won't have anything available at the public safety event. And so we create these issues for ourselves with our pelvic floor. And so separately from pelvic floor PT, I think that an annual visit to a physical therapist just for a checkup can be tremendously helpful. So instead of nursing that shoulder that's just been killing you for 6 months, why don't you go to the physical therapist once a year or twice a year and just be evaluated proactively before you have a huge problem? Now, if you're in a state such as Illinois, where you have direct access to physical therapy, that's a lot easier. That's an easy lift. Hey, it's been 6 months. I'm going to call up my physical therapist and make an appointment, because you don't need a referral. You don't need a doctor's prescription to go to physical therapy in a state like Illinois, where it's direct access. It's not going to be the same thing in all of the states. And so this may be a time when you have to advocate for yourself and say, listen, I work in a job that's I use the word high impact. It's probably not the right term, but it's rough and tumble. We are wearing a ton of gear. We are bending and moving and picking up things in ways that probably aren't optimal. And I just think it's worth sort of a checkup with a physical therapist every year. Many doctors are going to say, no. And then that's when you have to advocate for yourself and explain a little bit better what your job looks like. And then the last one is usually not a super comfortable topic for people to discuss with anyone, let alone their physician. But looking at things such as sexual dysfunction, so whether that's erectile dysfunction or something else, taking a look at things like that can help you dig into other problems. So is it testosterone? Is it sleep? Is it prostate? Is it something else? Having that conversation with your doctor can help enlighten them and direct your care. And then that was my list, but I just added another one because the eyes are the window to the soul, but the eyes are also the window to the brain, and a lot of different things are going on with the eyes. And so getting a good comprehensive eye test, not the one at corporate health or occupational health where you cover your eye with the tongue depressor and the nurse isn't even paying attention as you're reading it. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about a comprehensive eye test where they're checking pressures and taking pictures of your retina, and they are comparing to last year. There are some incredible things that can be picked up on an eye test. And so not only do we want to have good vision and take care of our eyes, but it's another screening process. I think that's all of the ones that I could think of. Again, Mike Connor, shout me out if I missed any. The other thing that I would try to do is track your body composition from year to year. Now, ours was easy. We had an in-body, very expensive in-body scale at our stations. People could get their body composition done anytime, but no less than once per year, people were getting their body composition done and tracking their trends. And so they were able to see not only body fat, but muscle mass, body water, and so on and so forth. Balance between limbs, right to left, and arms to legs to trunk. So if you can get that kind of information every single year, I think it's valuable. What do you do with all this information? I have 20 years of printouts in a folder. When I started, we didn't have my chart, so they always just handed me these results. But I started keeping very, very close tabs on them. So I would go ahead and print my results from my chart, and I was able to sometimes pick up on things that the physicians missed. So bottom line, you have to be your very best advocate. I think that's all that I wanted to talk about today. Reminder about the giveaway. So you need to either email me, info@firerescuewellness.org, or DM me on Instagram, the number or the word 150, and then I'll put everyone into a raffle. And unfortunately, this is United States only. I can't be trying to send stuff overseas. Not good. Not easy. I wanted to give one last recap about our last weekend with Dr. Brittany Hollerbeck in New York City, because we recorded the podcast on Friday night before all of the real adventures started. So first things first, it was so cold in New York City on Saturday. It was tragic. I actually said to Brittany, I'm like, do you think I should wear my coat? And she's like, yeah, you should wear your coat. So we took off in the morning first before we did anything. We did Crackle's having a 28-day workout challenge, and Brittany's participating. So we went down to the hotel gym, which was very nice, by the way. Had a great workout, had some breakfast, got ready, walked to kind of an iconic deli in Times Square, and then we went to Wicked for the 2 p.m. show. My dudes, my friends, I've seen it 5-6 times. Like on stage 5 or 6 times, and I was blown away again. And Brittany had never seen it. She did see the movie last fall, but she had never seen it. She was blown away. Beautiful theater, just Gershwin Theater, I think it was. Just beautiful. Loved it, loved it, loved it. Then we left, ate at this little Irish pub, and then walked to the Rogers Theater, which is much smaller and I think much older, and it was super cramped, but we saw Hamilton. Now, I knew nothing about Hamilton. I hadn't seen the Disney movie. I hadn't heard the soundtrack. Nothing. Incredible. Dropped the mic, no notes, so good. And then we finished up our trip on Sunday morning. Brittany wanted to go to church at St. Patrick's. It was beautiful. It was a beautiful church. It was a beautiful mass. It was wonderful. So all in all, the trip was fantastic. We had so much fun, and I would 100% do it again. All right, it's been almost a half hour. I thought this was going to be a 15-minute podcast, but here we are. I'm dropping the mic. AZ is out. Y'all have a great week. Don't forget to email me or DM me.